The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets waited in the darkness between distant suns. In the year 2247, they finally had their answer. The universe was full of life, and most of it did not care about Earth at all. Daniel Grant stood at the window of his small office on Station Covalise, the massive space station where the Galactic Council held its meetings. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. As Earth's ambassador to the Council, his job was to smile, shake hands with aliens, and pretend that humanity mattered in the grand scheme of galactic politics. It did not. The Galactic Council had over 300 member species. Some had been traveling between stars for millions of years. They had built empires that stretched across entire galaxies. They had weapons that could crack planets in half, and shields that could stop a sun from burning. Next to them, humanity was like a child who had just learned to walk. Earth had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. Their fleet was small. Their technology was outdated. The other species tolerated humans the way a group of adults might tolerate a noisy toddler at a dinner party. They smiled politely and hoped the humans would not break anything important. Daniel had accepted this reality long ago. His job was not to make humanity powerful. His job was to keep humanity alive until they could stand on their own feet. That meant being patient. That meant being humble. That meant swallowing his pride every single day. But on this particular morning, everything changed. His communication device beeped with an urgent message from Captain Kate Morgan, commander of the starship Resolute. Kate was a sharp woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had spent 20 years in Earth's defense fleet, and Daniel trusted her more than anyone else in the galaxy. Her face appeared on the screen. She looked pale. "Ambassador," she said, "we have a situation. I'm sending you footage from Kepler-22b. You need to see this immediately." Kepler-22b was a human colony on the edge of explored space. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. Over 40,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and scientists and their families. It was supposed to be a peaceful place, far from the politics of the Council. Daniel watched the footage in silence. Ships filled the sky above the colony. They were Velthary warships, long and angular, painted in the dark red colors of the Velthary Dominion. The Velthary were a proud species of reptilian warriors who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. They had been members of the Council for centuries, and they looked down on younger species like humanity. The warships opened fire. Beams of white energy cut through the colony's small defense stations like they were made of paper. Buildings exploded into clouds of dust and fire. People ran through the streets, screaming, trying to find shelter. But there was no shelter. There was nowhere to hide. The Velthary did not send ground troops. They did not try to capture the colony. They simply destroyed everything. Homes, schools, hospitals, the central plaza where children played every afternoon. All of it burned. The footage lasted for 6 minutes. When it ended, Daniel realized his hands were shaking. 40,000 people, dead in less than an hour. He made his way to the council chamber as fast as he could. The chamber was a massive circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central platform. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, their bodies ranging from small insect-like creatures to massive beings that looked like living mountains. At the center platform stood High Commander Zorath of the Velthary Dominion. He was a tall reptile with dark green scales and yellow eyes that gleamed with cruel intelligence. He wore ceremonial armor covered in medals and symbols of conquest. When he saw Daniel enter the chamber, he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Ah," Zorath said, his voice booming through the chamber. The human has arrived. Good. I want him to hear this. Daniel walked to the small podium reserved for humanity's representative. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand straight. The Velthari Dominion has exercised its right to claim disputed territory, Zorath announced to the council. The planet known as Kepler-22b falls within our historical borders. The human presence there was illegal. We have corrected this situation. You murdered 40,000 civilians, Daniel said. His voice cracked slightly, but he did not look away from Zorath. Children, families, people who had never held a weapon in their lives. Zorath waved a clawed hand dismissively. Casualties of territorial enforcement. The council recognizes our claim. The matter is closed. Daniel turned to the other representatives. Surely someone would speak up. Surely someone would condemn this act of pure evil. The chamber was silent. Councillor Shen of the Andari Republic, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, finally spoke. The territorial dispute between the Velthari Dominion and the human government is a bilateral matter. The council does not interfere in such disputes. This was not a dispute, Daniel said. This was a massacre. We had families there, children. Then perhaps, Zorath said, leaning forward with that terrible smile, your species should not have settled on worlds you could not defend. Let this be a lesson to you, human. The galaxy belongs to the strong. Your kind is soft, weak. You do not belong among the stars. Several representatives made sounds that Daniel recognized as laughter. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of 300 alien gazes upon him. Some looked at him with pity. Most looked at him with indifference. A few looked at him with the same contempt Zorath showed. None of them would help. Daniel walked out of the chamber without another word. He returned to his office and sat in the darkness for a long time. Then he opened a secure channel to Earth's United Defense Command and spoke to the people who actually made decisions for humanity. They will not help us, he said quietly. The council considers the matter closed. Zorath is claiming victory. He broadcast the attack as a warning to other species. What are your orders? There was a pause. Then a calm voice responded. Come home, Ambassador. All personnel are being recalled to Earth. Every ship, every station, every outpost. Come home. Daniel closed his eyes. He understood what that meant. Earth was not retreating in defeat. Earth was preparing for something else entirely. In the council chamber, Zorath celebrated his easy victory over the weak humans. He did not notice that every human on Station Corvallis had begun packing their belongings. The silence was coming. And after the silence would come something the Velthari had never experienced before, the wrath of a united humanity. 6 months passed, and the galaxy forgot about humanity. The Galactic Council had more important things to worry about. Trade agreements between ancient empires. Border disputes between powerful species. The endless political games that had been played for millions of years. The destruction of a small human colony was nothing more than a minor footnote in galactic history. High Commander Zorath became something of a celebrity among the Velthari people. He gave interviews where he laughed about the terrified faces of the human colonists. He published a book about the importance of teaching lesser species their place in the universe. He received medals and honors from the Velthari government. The humans ran away, he told anyone who would listen. They pulled back to their little planet and hid like frightened animals. They know they cannot challenge us. They know they are nothing. On Station Corvallis, the human embassy sat empty. The lights were off. The doors were locked. A thin layer of dust covered the furniture inside. Other species walked past without giving it a second glance, but something was happening on Earth. Kate Morgan stood on a platform overlooking the largest shipyard in human history. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers across the Nevada desert. A maze of construction frames and assembly lines and glowing forges. Thousands of workers moved through the complex like ants building the greatest nest ever created. 6 months ago, she had been a simple ship captain. Now she wore the uniform of Fleet Admiral, the highest rank in Earth's military. Her promotion had not been a reward. It had been a burden. The leaders of Earth had looked at her service record, her tactical scores, her reputation for getting impossible jobs done, and they had decided she would lead humanity's response to the Kepler massacre. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since then. The ship taking shape in front of her was called the Harbinger. It was the first of a new class of battle cruisers, vessels designed with one purpose in mind: war against a superior enemy. The Harbinger was 3 kilometers long, covered in thick armor plating and armed with weapons that had only existed in theory 6 months ago. Quantum pulse, cannons that could tear through energy shields, kinetic bombardment systems that could level cities from orbit, point defense networks that could track and destroy thousands of missiles at once. Every piece of technology represented years of research compressed into months through sheer desperation and determination. Kate watched as workers installed the main gun, a massive railgun that ran the entire length of the ship. When fired, it would accelerate a tungsten rod to nearly the speed of light. Nothing in the known galaxy could survive a direct hit. Impressive, isn't it? She turned to see Dr. Samuel Perry, the chief scientist of the Weapons Development Program. He was a short man with wild gray hair and thick glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. Before the massacre, he had been working on agricultural technology to help feed growing populations. Now he built weapons of war. Will it work? Kate asked. Samuel shrugged. In theory, absolutely. In practice, we won't know until we use it in actual combat. The Valkyrie have had millions of years to develop their technology. We've had 6 months. We're not trying to match them. We're trying to surprise them. Surprise them how? The Valkyrie fight like every other species in the galaxy, Samuel explained. They have rules. They have patterns. They believe that superior numbers and superior technology always win. They've never faced an enemy willing to do whatever it takes to win. They've never faced humans. Kate nodded slowly. She understood what he meant. The Valkyrie saw war as a calculation. Ships plus weapons plus soldiers equaled victory. They did not understand what humans were capable of when they were desperate, angry, and united by a common purpose. She thought about her brother, Ryan. He had been a lieutenant stationed on Kepler 22b, assigned to help train the local defense force. He had been 28 years old with a wife and a baby daughter. He had called Kate 2 days before the attack to tell her about his daughter's first steps. Now, he was a name on a memorial wall. Kate visited that wall every night. It was located in a quiet garden near the shipyard, a simple black stone covered with over 40,000 names. She would stand there in the darkness and read the names until her eyes hurt. She had memorized hundreds of them. She knew their stories, their faces, their dreams that would never come true. This wall was why she did not sleep. This wall was why she worked until her body screamed for rest. This wall was why she would lead the fleet into battle against an enemy that should have been impossible to defeat. Across the planet, similar scenes played out in every nation. Factories that once made cars now made tanks. Universities that once studied art now studied tactics. Children who once dreamed of becoming doctors now dreamed of becoming soldiers. The entire human race had united behind a single goal. Revenge. In the Valkyrie Dominion. Intelligence Officer Korvac sat in his dark office and stared at his computer screens. He was old for a Valkyrie. His scales faded to a dull gray, his eyes tired from decades of analyzing data. Most of his colleagues dismissed him as a paranoid fool who saw threats where none existed. But Korvax had survived this long by trusting his instincts. And his instincts were screaming at him now. Something was wrong with the human solar system. The energy readings from Earth had increased by over 300% in 6 months. Normally, such an increase would indicate rapid industrial expansion. But what could the humans possibly be building? They had no resources. They had no technology. They had no experience in large-scale manufacturing. Unless they were building a fleet. Korvax wrote a detailed report and sent it to High Commander Zorith. The response came back within hours. Your concerns are noted and dismissed. The humans are a defeated species. They lack the courage, the resources, and the intelligence to threaten the Dominion. Focus your attention on actual threats. Korvax read the message twice. Then he deleted it and returned to watching his screens. He had done his duty. He had warned his superiors. Whatever happened next was not his responsibility. But late at night, when the Dominion's capital city slept, Korvax would sometimes look up at the stars and wonder what the humans were really doing behind their wall of silence on Earth. Kate Morgan stood before the completed Harbinger as it floated in its construction dock. Beside it, dozens of other ships were reaching final assembly. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, support vessels. An entire fleet built from nothing in half a year. She placed her hand on the cold metal of the Harbinger's hull. Almost ready, she whispered to the ship. Almost time. In her pocket, she carried a photograph of her brother and his family, taken on the day his daughter was born. She looked at it every morning and every night. She had promised herself that she would look at it last time before the first shot was fired. The silence was almost over. Earth was about to speak, and its voice would be thunder. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like ghosts appearing from the darkness between stars. 214 warships arranged in perfect formation. Their hulls painted in the deep blue of Earth's oceans and the black of the void they had crossed to reach this moment. At the center of the formation flew the Harbinger, Admiral Kate Morgan's flagship. She stood on the bridge, surrounded by her senior officers, watching the planet Dranex Prime grow larger on the viewscreen. It was a military outpost on the edge of Velthury space, home to 3 orbital defense stations and a fleet of 40 warships. The Velthury had not detected them yet. Their sensors were designed to spot conventional faster-than-light signatures, and human engineers had spent months developing new drive systems that were nearly invisible. Kate took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. After this, there would be no going back. No negotiations. No peace talks. Only war until one side was completely defeated. She activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, making sure every ship in both fleets could hear her words. To the Velthury Dominion. 6 months ago, you attacked the human colony on Kepler-2b. You killed 42,000 innocent people, men, women, children. You called us weak. You called us soft. You laughed at our grief. She paused, letting the words sink in across the vast emptiness of space. Today, we answer. The Velthury Defense Commander, a veteran named Torax, stared at his sensor screens in disbelief. 200 human ships? Impossible. His intelligence reports said humans barely had 50 vessels in their entire fleet. Where had these ships come from? How had they arrived without warning? He had no time to find answers. The human fleet was already moving. The Harbinger fired first. Its main gun roared with a sound that could not exist in space, but somehow seemed to echo through the hull of every ship in the system. A tungsten rod, the size of a ground transport, accelerated to near light speed and crossed the distance to the first Velthury defense station in less than a second. The station's shields, designed to withstand conventional energy weapons, flickered briefly and then failed completely. The rod punched through the station's armor like a needle through paper and exited through the other side, leaving a tunnel of destruction that vented the station's atmosphere into space. The station exploded. Torak screamed orders to his fleet. Attack. Destroy the human ships. Show them the price of challenging the Dominion. The Valkyrie warships surged forward, their captains confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had fought hundreds of battles against dozens of species. They had never lost, but they had never fought humans. The battle unfolded in ways that made no sense to Valkyrie tactical doctrine. Human ships did not maintain safe distances. They charged directly into the enemy formation, absorbing devastating hits that should have forced retreat. A human destroyer, its engines crippled and its hull torn open, used its last moments of power to ram a Valkyrie cruiser at full speed, destroying both vessels in a ball of fire. Ground Commander Eric Shaw led the assault on the second defense station. He was a big man with a shaved head and scars across his face from a dozen previous battles. His Marines had trained for 6 months in zero-gravity combat, learning to fight in the tight corridors and cramped spaces of enemy stations. The Valkyrie defenders outnumbered them 3-1. It did not matter. Eric's Marines moved through the station like water through cracks in stone, always flowing, always pressing forward. They used explosives to breach sealed doors. They used their own bodies as shields to protect their wounded comrades. When their ammunition ran out, they fought with knives and bare hands. In one corridor, a young Marine named Danny Ruiz found himself surrounded by 5 Valkyrie soldiers. His rifle was empty. His combat knife was broken. He was bleeding from wounds on his chest and arms. He smiled, pulled the pins on 3 grenades attached to his belt, and charged directly at the enemy. The explosion killed all 6 of them. Eric found Danny's remains later, after the station was secured. He knelt beside the body and placed his hand on the young man's shoulder. "I'll remember you," he whispered. "We'll all remember you." The Battle of Drenax Prime lasted 4 hours. The Valkyrie lost 63 ships, 3 orbital stations, and over 15,000 soldiers. Humanity lost 19 ships and 4,000 Marines. It was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, the human fleet carved a path through Valkyrie territory. They did not stop. They did not rest. Every time the Valkyrie assembled a defense force, the humans found a way to destroy it. Every time the Valkyrie built a fortification, the humans tore it down. But the humans did something that confused their enemy completely. They did not kill civilians. Before every battle, human ships would broadcast warnings to all non-military personnel. Evacuation ships were allowed to leave without interference. Medical facilities were protected. Food supplies were left untouched. The humans destroyed only military targets with surgical precision. Valkyrie commanders could not understand this strategy. Why show mercy? Why leave enemies alive who might fight again tomorrow? It made no tactical sense. They did not understand that humans were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for justice. And justice meant punishing those responsible, not slaughtering the innocent. Admiral Morgan stood on the bridge of the Harbinger as they approached the 5th Valkyrie world in 3 weeks. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her uniform hung loose on her body because she had forgotten to eat more times than she could count. But her voice remained steady when she gave orders, and her hands remained firm on the controls. Commander Lisa Park, her second in command, approached with a datapad showing the fleet's status. 27 ships lost so far. 8,000 casualties. Ammunition running low on several vessels. The fleet was tired. "Admiral," Lisa said quietly, "the crews are exhausted. We've been fighting non-stop for weeks. Maybe we should pause, resupply, give everyone a chance to rest." Kate shook her head. "We stop when it's done. Not before. Some people are saying we've already done enough. We've destroyed their military infrastructure. We've proven our point. Maybe it's time to negotiate. Kate turned to look at her commander. Her eyes were cold as the void between stars. 42,000 people died on Kepler-22b. Children who never got to grow up. Parents who never got to watch their babies walk. My brother, who will never see his daughter's face again. We have not done enough. We will not do enough until the Velthari understand that humanity is not something to be dismissed. We will not stop until they surrender completely and beg for forgiveness. Lisa nodded slowly. She had known Kate for 15 years. She had never seen this side of her before. The kind woman who used to laugh at bad jokes and cry during sad movies was gone. In her place stood something harder, colder, forged in the fires of grief and shaped by the hammer of war. The fleet jumped to the next system. The Velthari resistance crumbled across the galaxy. The Galactic Council watched the war unfold on their view screens. Species that had ignored humanity for decades now recorded every battle, every tactic, every impossible victory. They saw human pilots flying damaged ships into enemy formations rather than retreat. They saw human soldiers charging fortified positions with nothing but determination and fury. They saw a species that had been dismissed as weak and soft, revealing a capacity for violence that shocked even the most ancient civilizations. Counselor Shen of the Andari Republic watched the recording of the Battle of Drenax Prime for the 7th time. What are they? She whispered to herself. She had studied thousands of species in her long career. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed wars that lasted centuries. But she had never seen anything like humanity. They were not stronger than their enemies. They were not smarter. They did not have better weapons or more ships or superior technology. But they had something else, something that could not be measured or quantified. They had a fire burning inside them that refused to go out, and that fire was about to burn the Velthari Dominion to ash. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every member species packed the rising tiers of seats, their bodies pressing against each other as they struggled for a better view of the central platform. Cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the scene to billions of viewers across the galaxy. High Commander Zorath stood at the center of the platform, and he was no longer smiling. His scales had lost their healthy green color, fading to a sickly gray. His eyes, once bright with cruel confidence, now darted nervously around the chamber. His ceremonial armor hung crooked on his body, hastily put on without care for appearance. He looked like what he was, a broken leader of a breaking empire. The council must intervene, Zorath said, his voice cracking. The humans have gone too far. They are destroying everything. Our fleets are gone. Our stations are ruins. Our military is scattered and defeated. This is not war. This is extermination. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several representatives exchanged glances. Just 6 months ago, this same room had echoed with laughter as Zorath mocked humanity's grief. Now the laughter was silent, replaced by uncomfortable shifting and whispered conversations. Councilor Shen of the Andari Republic rose from her seat. Her silver skin reflected the chamber's lights as she looked down at Zorath with an expression that might have been pity. "High Commander," she said, "you come to us asking for help. But 6 months ago, when Ambassador Grant stood in this very chamber and asked for help, you laughed. You called his species weak and soft. You said they did not belong among the stars. Do you remember this?" Zorath's jaw tightened. That was different. We were exercising our territorial rights. The humans are attacking without provocation. Without provocation? A new voice echoed through the chamber. Every head turned toward the entrance. Ambassador Daniel Grant walked slowly down the central aisle, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing like the ornate robes and armor that most representatives preferred. His face was calm, almost peaceful, but his eyes held a weight that made even the largest beings in the chamber feel small. Behind him walked two human Marines in full combat armor, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They were not there to fight. They were there to remind everyone in the chamber what humanity had become. Daniel climbed the steps to the central platform and stood directly across from Zorath. The two men were close enough to touch, close enough for Daniel to see the fear in the Velthary's yellow eyes. 6 months ago, Daniel said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber, I stood in this room and showed you footage of the Kepler massacre. I showed you children running through burning streets. I showed you families being torn apart by your weapons. I asked for justice. I begged for help. He paused, letting the memory hang in the air. You laughed at me. All of you. Some of you turned away because it was easier than facing the truth. Some of you smiled because you thought humanity had learned its place. And some of you, High Commander, broadcast our suffering across the galaxy as entertainment. Zorath tried to speak, but no words came out. So we went home, Daniel continued. We shut our doors. We turned off our lights. And we built. We built ships like the galaxy had never seen. We built weapons that your scientists said were impossible. We trained soldiers who would rather die than retreat. And when we were ready, we came back. He stepped closer to Zorath, close enough to smell the fear on the Velthary's breath. You asked if this was provocation. Let me tell you about provocation. Provocation is murdering 42,000 innocent people because you wanted to teach a lesser species its place. Provocation is laughing while children scream. Provocation is standing in this chamber and calling the deaths of families a minor territorial dispute. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. What we have done is not provocation. It is consequence. Counselor Shen spoke again, her voice careful and measured. Ambassador Grant, the Council acknowledges that the Velthary attack on Kepler 22b was regrettable, but the scale of human retaliation has raised concerns among many member species. Your fleet has destroyed over 100 Velthary warships. You have dismantled their entire military infrastructure. Some are saying this goes beyond justice and enters the territory of vengeance. Daniel turned to face the assembled representatives. His eyes moved slowly across the chamber, meeting the gaze of species that had ignored humanity's cries for help. Let me ask you a question, he said. If someone murdered your families, if someone killed your children and laughed about it, if someone broadcast your grief as a warning to others, what would you do? Would you write a strongly worded letter to the council? Would you file a formal complaint? Would you wait patiently for bureaucrats who had already dismissed your suffering? No one answered. We are not a cruel species, Daniel continued. We did not bomb Velthary cities. We did not slaughter Velthary children. We did not do to them what they did to us. Every civilian was given the chance to evacuate. Every medical facility was left standing. Every food supply was protected. We destroyed only their ability to make war, not their ability to live. He pointed at Zorath, who flinched as if the finger was a weapon. He wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Well, we learned. We learned that the galaxy does not care about fairness. We learned that the only justice is the justice you make for yourself. We learned that strength is the only language some species understand. Zorath finally found his voice. What do you want? What will stop this madness? Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Unconditional surrender. Your entire military command structure will submit to human authority. Your weapons manufacturing facilities will be dismantled under our supervision. Full financial reparations will be paid to every family that lost someone on Kepler-22b, and you personally. High Commander will record a message that will be broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. What message? Zorath asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You will admit that the Velthari Dominion was wrong. You will apologize for the massacre. You will list every name of every person who died because of your arrogance. All 42,000 of them. And you will do it while kneeling. Zorath's eyes went wide. You would humiliate us? You would destroy our honor? Daniel's smile faded. His face became as cold as the space between stars. You murdered children, Zorath. You burned families alive and called it a lesson. You laughed while parents held their dying children in their arms. Humiliation is mercy. Humiliation means you get to live. The chamber was completely silent. Not a single being moved. Not a single being spoke. The only sound was Zorath's ragged breathing as he struggled to process what was happening. Counselor. Shen cleared her throat. Ambassador Grant, the Council must discuss these demands before any official response can be given. There are protocols to follow, procedures to observe. Daniel shook his head. The Council had its chance to help us 6 months ago. You chose to look away. These demands are not for the Council. They are for the Velthari Dominion alone. You have 72 hours to accept, or our fleet will resume its advance. He turned and walked toward the exit. His Marines falling into step behind him at the doorway. He paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. One more thing. Humanity came to this galaxy hoping to find friends. We hope to learn from you, to grow alongside you, to share in the wonders of the universe. Instead, we learned that the galaxy only respects those it fears. So be it. From this day forward, humanity will always offer friendship first. We will always prefer peace over war. But let Kepler-22b and the fall of the Velthari military serve as a lesson to everyone in this chamber. His voice hardened into steel. If you harm our people, if you kill our families, if you laugh at our grief, we will find you. We will cross any distance. We will overcome any obstacle. We will fight until our last breath and beyond. And we will answer, always. He walked out of the chamber, leaving 300 species sitting in stunned silence in the recordings that spread across the galaxy in the following hours. One image became famous. High Commander Zorath, the great warrior who had laughed at humanity's tears, standing alone on the central platform with his hands shaking and his eyes empty. The countdown had begun. 72 hours to decide the fate of an empire. The surrender ceremony took place in the main hangar bay of the Harbinger. Admiral Kate Morgan had chosen this location deliberately. The hangar was vast, large enough to hold a small city, and it was filled with rows of human soldiers standing at perfect attention. Their armor gleamed under the bright lights. Their weapons hung at their sides. Their faces were hidden behind identical dark visors. They were silent. They did not need to speak. Their presence was message enough. High Commander Zorath walked through the center of the hangar, flanked by 2 human Marines. His ceremonial armor had been stripped away, replaced by simple gray clothing that marked him as a prisoner. His scales had turned almost white from stress and fear. His steps were slow, heavy, like a man walking to his own execution. In a way. Kate stood at the end of the hangar, waiting behind a small table covered with documents. She wore her full dress uniform, every medal and ribbon earned during the campaign displayed on her chest. Her face showed no emotion. Her eyes tracked Zorath's approach with the cold patience of a predator watching its prey. Beside her stood Ambassador Daniel Grant and Ground Commander Eric Shaw. Behind them, a massive view screen displayed a live feed that was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched from thousands of worlds, waiting to see what would happen next. Zora stopped in front of the table. He looked at the documents, then at Kate, then at the rows of silent soldiers surrounding him. "Is this truly necessary?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "The war is over. We have agreed to your terms. Must you make a spectacle of our defeat?" Kate spoke for the first time since Zorath had entered the hangar. Her voice was flat and motionless, but it carried clearly through the vast space. "6 months ago, you broadcast the destruction of Kepler-22b as a spectacle. You wanted the galaxy to see humanity's weakness. You wanted everyone to laugh at our grief. Now the galaxy will see something else." She gestured to the documents. "Sign." Zorath's clawed hand trembled as he picked up the writing instrument. The surrender agreement was dozens of pages long, covering everything from military disarmament to financial reparations to territorial changes. Every line was a wound to Velthari pride. Every paragraph was a reminder of how completely they had been defeated. He signed each page without reading them. There was no point. The terms were not negotiable. When he finished, Kate took the documents and handed them to an aide. Then she looked at Zorath with those cold, empty eyes. Now the apology. A camera drone floated closer, positioning itself to capture every detail of what would happen next. Zorath looked at it, then at the billions of viewers watching through it, and his face twisted with shame. He began, then stopped. His voice caught in his throat. "Kneel," Kate said. The word hung in the air like a blade. For a long moment, nothing moved. Zorath stood rigid, his entire body fighting against the command. Kneeling was the ultimate sign of submission in Velthari culture. It meant total defeat. It meant admitting that another being was superior in every way. But what choice did he have? Slowly, painfully, the High Commander of the Velthari Dominion lowered himself to his knees. Kate nodded slightly. "Now speak." Zorath closed his eyes. When he opened them again, tears were streaming down his face, leaving wet trails on his gray scales. The Velthari Dominion formally apologizes for the attack on the human colony of Kepler-22b. We were wrong. We were cruel. We committed an act of evil against innocent people who had done nothing to deserve such suffering. He paused, his voice breaking. The 42,000 people who died were not enemies. They were families. They were parents and children. They were teachers and farmers and dreamers who only wanted to live in peace among the stars. We took that from them. We burned their homes. We ended their futures. And we laughed. He bowed his head. We laughed while children screamed. We celebrated while parents died. We called it a lesson when it was murder. We called it strength when it was cowardice. We called humans weak when they were simply kind. His voice dropped to a whisper that the microphones barely captured. "I am sorry. The Velthari Dominion is sorry. We accept full responsibility for this crime. We accept the punishment we have received. And we ask, though we do not deserve it, for the chance to be better than what we have shown ourselves to be." The hangar remained silent for a long moment. Then Kate spoke. "Stand up." Zorath rose to his feet, his legs unsteady. Kate stepped forward until she was close enough to speak without being recorded. "I do not forgive you," she said quietly. "I will never forgive you. But the war is over, and my people want peace more than they want vengeance. You will live. You will rebuild. And every day for the rest of your life, you will remember what you did and what it cost you." She stepped back. "This ceremony is concluded. The Velthari Dominion has surrendered. The human Velthari War is officially over." The broadcast ended. The camera drones floated away. The soldiers began to file out of the hangar in perfect formation. Within an hour, the great space was empty except for Kate. Standing alone in the center. Daniel Grant found her there an hour later. He walked quietly to her side and waited. "It's done," Kate said finally. "We won. The galaxy will never dismiss us again." "No," Daniel agreed. "They won't. Do you feel anything?" Kate thought about the question for a long time. "I thought I would feel satisfied. I thought seeing Zorath Neal would fill the emptiness inside me. But it doesn't. Ryan is still dead. All those people are still dead. Nothing we did brings them back." Daniel nodded. "That's the truth about revenge. It doesn't heal wounds. It just spreads the pain around." They stood in silence for a while. "What happens now?" Kate asked. "Now we go home. We rebuild Kepler-22b. We honor the dead by living the lives they would have wanted us to live. And we make sure this never happens again." Kate reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. Ryan and his family, smiling at the camera on the day his daughter was born. She had looked at this picture every day of the war, using it as fuel for her anger. Now she looked at it differently. She saw her brother smile and remembered the man he had been before the fire and the pain and the death. A man who loved his family. A man who believed in peace. A man who would have been horrified by the destruction his death had caused. "I think I need to rest," she said quietly. Daniel put his hand on her shoulder. "You've earned it. We all have." 1 year later, Kate Morgan stood in a quiet garden on the restored colony of Kepler-22b. The memorial wall had been rebuilt, now stretching for hundreds of meters and bearing not just the names of the massacre victims, but also the names of every soldier who had died in the war. Ryan's name was there, near the center, surrounded by his family's names. Kate's niece was also there, held in the arms of her grandmother, who had survived only because she had been visiting another system when the attack happened. The little girl was almost 2 years old now, with her father's eyes and her mother's smile. "Your daddy was a good man," Kate said softly to the child. "He would have been so proud of you." The little girl laughed and reached for a butterfly that was floating past. Kate smiled. It was a real smile, the first one she had felt in almost 2 years. Behind her, the new colony stretched out under blue skies. Buildings were rising. Families were moving in. Children were playing in parks that had once been fields of ash. Life was returning to Kepler-22b, as it always did. Above them, human ships patrolled the sky. Not warships now, but defensive platforms designed to ensure that no one would ever attack this world again. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no longer a minor species to be ignored or bullied. But that was not the most important change. The most important change was in how other species looked at humans now. Not with fear, exactly, though fear was certainly part of it. They looked at humans with a new kind of respect, the kind given to an equal rather than a lesser being. And slowly, carefully, tentatively, some of them began to look at humans with something else. Hope. Because if a young species could stand against an ancient empire and win, maybe the galaxy was not as fixed and unchangeable as everyone had believed. Maybe the strong did not always have to crush the weak. Maybe there was room in the universe for kindness and justice and mercy. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had taught the galaxy something important. Kate placed her hand on the memorial wall one last time. "Rest now," she whispered to her brother and all the others who had fallen. "Rest now. We're home." She turned and walked into the sunlight, toward the future, toward whatever challenges and wonders awaited humanity among the stars. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was ready.